Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Hipfire Podcast. Today, we will be previewing the Elite Series Challenger qualifier that is on this upcoming Saturday. And what we're going to do is we're going to kind of give our picks for who we expect to be the top 8 in each region, in EU and in NA. And we're going to walk you guys through how we make our picks. And so as you can see here, we got a bunch of potential teams, and we're going to kind of slide them into the list and give our thoughts on kind of why we're ranking them in a certain way. Again, like this isn't like a super concrete ranking. We're not saying like whoever we pick first is the guaranteed number one. This is just kind of our preview going into the series. So with that, why don't we start with EU? Yes, who do you think right now is the best team in Europe going into the Scouting Series qualifier?
Yeah, it's the best team. That I'd actually find to be quite difficult to say. If you put a gun to my head and told me to pick, House Tarth would be the answer I'd give you, although they didn't have the best showing at the most recent Cup, of course, placing, I believe that was 8th, if I'm not mistaken, losing to Singularity early on in the bracket as well as Whalers' team. But yeah, I'd say you could really argue a number of these teams are first, but for me, I personally put House Tarth. They've looked consistent throughout, obviously spearheaded by the insane young talent that is Afro. They have been consistent throughout the majority of the cups they've played. I think one of the few teams that haven't placed outside the top 8, throughout 5 cups. They're the only team to have won 2 cups thus far, and they're overall a very strong team. Again, they can get it done in all sort of game modes. Gizmo, incredibly young talent on the AR. Afro, as I mentioned earlier, into Frag and Wee Man. They're both incredibly smart and help round out this team very well, and it's what makes them such a strong force throughout the entire region.
Yeah, those are really good points. I actually agree with you. I think House Tarth. I'm right there with you. I think for me also, like you mentioned with Afro, obviously Hydra's still there, but he shouldn't be. Outside of Hydra, I do think Afro is kind of the next up in that region. So that gives them even like an extra edge as to why they're like the top teams, because if they need him to bail them out for a map, like he can do that. He has that ability. So why don't we slide them to that number 1 spot for now? All right, so number 2 here, I'm thinking, I don't want to have like the whole recency bias play too much of a factor, because obviously we're looking at all the cups as a whole. And when we look at EU as a whole, like we mentioned before, there's been a lot of volatility, but only within the top 8. Like there hasn't been that many teams that have breached the top 8 that consistently that are outside of it, but the teams that are in the top 8 keep moving around everywhere, so it's kind of hard to pick. But personally, I'm leaning towards the Rams as a number 2 pick. I know Obtain played them like in won every hardpoint against them in the last grand finals, and that does not bode well for the Rams. But what I will say is that's not a team I'd expect to continue to have respawn problems. Like they're pretty slay heavy. I'm not like, I know Nvidian can be a little split, lacking in that kind of area, but they still have a lot of journey and medals to slay out. So I expect that to get picked up. And where I kind of see that team is, I think we had Paj on before, and Paj was saying that like they're the most, maybe it was Potsy's, one of the two. They're saying like they're one of the most well communicated teams. Like they play almost the best like team game in Europe. So for that reason, I had them second. But who do you think should be second? Do you agree with that pick?
No, I agree with having them as the next pick. The Rams being that team. I mean, fun fact: they actually of the other teams and players in general that if you look at their average placement, they're tied for first with the guys on House Tarth. So yeah, no, I think they're a very well-rounded team. I mean, you look at their last 2 cups, third and first. They're a very well-rounded team, very strong team, as you mentioned, and you can't go wrong with having them up there.
All right, nice. That takes us into the 3rd pick. So this is getting so tough, because I kind of want to pick Obtained because they looked so good recently,
but
and they've also won
a roster change.
But yeah, I was gonna say, they just went through a roster change, so it's like it's tough, right?
For me,
I don't know.
I think for me, I'm gonna. This won't be a popular pick, but just based on how they played, based on how quickly this team has come together, I'm gonna put 3rd as Whalers team, Whalers and Hydra. Yeah, I know people won't expect that. I was really high on them. Obviously, we talked to their coach Potsy on the previous podcast, and this was back when they had Chain and they had Henry rather come in for the last or the most previous cup, and they looked very well rounded, very strong. I was worried about their communication, given how strong and vocal a guy like Chain is, but they didn't seem to have that problem whatsoever. In fact, it looked like the roles worked out even better because Keza got to move to flex, even though he's a natural sub. He looked very strong at flex, looked very comfortable, was making plays consistently throughout the map. Henry and Hydra, their pacing seemed to be more in tune with one another and allowed them to work together more efficiently than the most previous team. And Whalers has always been Whalers. So I think given also the current roster maintenance going on with obviously Orglis and Team Obtained, I think Whalers team is going to benefit from that, and I think they're going to succeed as a result.
That's definitely a good pick. I was actually thinking, like, also with the Afro argument I used earlier, Hydra's still there, right? So
Yeah.
in terms of that argument, Hydra is probably the best player in Europe right now. So that's a fair assessment as well. And also to your point, like, I was really really impressed with Henry. Like,
Mhm.
I know what to expect from Hydra and Whalers, and Kez has been pretty consistent as well, especially in S&D. But I had no idea what to expect from Henry playing with higher caliber teammates, and he played really well. So I actually like that pick. But going into the next team, did Dave find a team? Is
Yeah.
he on Connect Four?
So Dave is actually on Connect 4 for
Okay.
Felon. Yeah.
Okay. So then, for me, the next team is between Singularity, Nasty, Connect Four, and Obtained, and I'm leaning towards Obtained,
Mhm.
even though they had the roster change. I do like that roster. I think Chain. I don't think they're going to miss too much of the slaying that Harry provides with Chain. I think he'll keep up, and if anything, like they'll S&D will get better because S&D
Mhm.
is where they struggled a little bit. But
Oh yeah.
Chain, as everyone knows, is like an S&D mastermind. That's what he built his whole career on. So I think he'll really improve their S&D. And I don't think the respawn will take that much of a hit. So I have them fourth. But what do you think about that?
I agree. I think fourth is fair. I mean, they've been sort of a surprise in how strong of a force they've been. I mean, they're consistently taking out top teams every single cup. I agree with your assessment. Chain can only help their S&D. I mean, their S&D can't get much worse. Let's be honest. It's been
Yeah.
kind of lackluster, and if they improve it all in their S&D, I mean, they win the next cup, and they're with House Tarth, one of the two-time winners. So even though they've gone through roster change, Chain's the kind of guy that I feel like can elevate any roster with the way that how vocal he is, with the exception of Singularity because beef and all. But uh, yeah, I agree with the fourth pick. But on to the fifth. I'm gonna say Singularity. I mean, you could argue Orglis, Connect Four obviously has had a good replacement, but I'm gonna believe and buy into the Singularity sort of rebound. They obviously
Hmm.
had the whole thing with Detain, and if you look at the way they played this last cup, there was a lot of maps that came down to last minute clutches or huge momentum swings that they needed. And maybe you can take those signs of a team that isn't fundamentally correct. And although they've kept the same roster throughout the entire season, they've obviously had Detain dropped at one point and come back on. So I think the potential of this roster, as we said from the start, is first place. They're always a threat to win. It's just a matter if they can put it together. I think that this resurgence is real that they've seen. They look a lot stronger. I think even that with the change in the meta, bids on the 47U looks dominant. So I think it's a safe bet to put them fifth, but I can see arguments why you wouldn't.
Well, also, like, this team should not be outside the top four. Like, this roster should not be
No, it
outside the
should
top
not.
four. So, with Detain fired up again, maybe we'll get back to that position. And like you said, like last tournament, they did look a lot better. So, definitely like a if we did this after Cup Four, I would have put them even lower. But after Cup Four, I don't. I think this is a pretty good placement for them right now.
Hmm.
So the next one for me is between Nasty and Connect Four.
Yeah.
And so Nasty's team, obviously they let go of Dave for Harry, and I'm kind of questioning roles a little bit. I don't know how that's going to work. And then on the Connect Four side of things, obviously they get kind of, let's say, blessing in disguise because they land on with Dave, right? But then
Yeah.
they really did find consistent form with Felon, so it kind of sucks for that reason as well. I mean, obviously Dave has nothing more to prove. He's already done enough to prove that he deserves a spot on a team like that, right?
Hmm.
But they had found consistency with Fallon. I don't know how like seamless the transition will be, But I'm actually really struggling. I kind of want to put Orglis ahead of Connect Four.
I agree with you there. It's hard to
Okay.
not put a team like Orglis with the names that they have. I
Right?
mean, Josh, Vortex, Nasty. Although, I
Nasty's like
mean,
also top 4 player in the EU right now. Like
yeah, I mean, you look at the first, like when they went third, first, and third, and then top 8, top 6. So like the last 2 cups, obviously, recently have not looked strong. I mean, even the match against Singularity. I mean, there was like that last second clutch from Detain. If that doesn't happen, or Orglis probably win, and they go to map 5, and who knows what happens from there.
yeah.
So again, I agree. The roles, I'm not too sure. Is Harry going to be the main AR? Is Josh going to move to main AR? Who knows? Um, Nasty hasn't looked as strong off flex from what I could tell, the limited that I've seen. Granted, I haven't watched a lot of their matches, so I could just be talking out of my ass here. But I agree. I think you can't really put them lower than 6. I don't think. I don't think it'd be fair. But again, them doing a roster change. I mean, this was what, Tuesday or Monday that this roster change happened. This was recent, so they're gonna have to have a short turnaround in order to make this top 8. But I don't think they'll have any issues.
Yeah, and also to that same like kind of point is we said with Chain like the roster will get better, right? The nice thing about this change with Harry is you've kind of had the same 3 guys, or like the same like Josh Vortex. It's been the same kind of feel to the team for a while. I wonder if Harry brings like a different kind of energy, different kind of play style. Maybe they'll like switch things up and be a little faster, and maybe they'll bring more out of Nasty. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm excited to see how the team plays and how Harry fits in. It's going to be interesting to see for sure.
Yeah.
And then Connect 4 we said would be 7th then, which makes sense. So let me move them over here.
Yeah.
Good old Connect 4. So that means the last spot we have between Team 3G and Team Empton. And by the way, like upsets can definitely happen, but it just seems like in Europe it's less likely to happen. And the last spot that we want for top 8, we're kind of going between Team 3G and Team Empton here. So Team Empton being Eric Boom's team, and Team 3G being no, we may have left that team.
Yeah.
That team right
So the Team 3G would be the guys of Aroma,
Aroma, yeah, that's right.
Aroma, Nile, Disarray, and Genesis.
They were looking good in scrims lately.
Yeah, they've had their placements here and there. I mean, granted, they've only placed in the top 8 once.
Yeah.
So that was Cup 3, which is 4. Other than that, they placed top 16 consistently, which is why we're going to put Team Ented 8th. Obviously, they had their own roster change where they, Method Sick decided that he was going to stream full time, and they added Sukri, and they still placed top 8, if I'm not mistaken, at the last Challengers Cup. Now, again, I didn't get to watch a lot of this team, so I don't know how the roles have looked. I know they've been scrimming teams, some of the top teams lately, and they have, they've been here and there. But again, there's just not enough of a sample size for me to consider putting a team like Team 3G or any of the other teams like Raven Esports or Trotty's team or whatever.
Or Luti's team.
Yeah, or Luti team, for example, to like make the case. And I think that's the stark contrast you'll see when we move over to NA is that EU really does have like a set 8 teams that are all extremely talented, and NA is a bit more of a mess, so to say.
Yeah. No, I agree. Also, interesting note, I don't know about all the matchups. I don't want to get too far into that, but I do know that Eric Boom on his stream said that if they make it through winners, the first round matchup they'll play to get qualified for top 8 will be against the Rams. So if you want to watch a nice Spanish rivalry to make it to the Elite Series, Rams Empton could be the first matchup, which would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But so that's kind of wrapping up our thoughts on EU here. Like we said, very, very competitive, solid top 8, and everybody on the outside can definitely pull off upsets. There's teams out there that can do it, but we're pretty confident that these top 8 will be the ones you see in the Elite Series.
Yeah.
But with that, we're going to move on to NA now. Let me just hide all these nice and wonderful graphics. All right, so top 8, NA time. So we got a lot of teams that we can try to slot into top 8, so it's going to be a little tough. But we'll do our best not to offend anybody too much here. I mean, there's a lot of competitive teams, and there's only a couple that are like a for sure, will qualify, which is like the scary thing. But why don't we talk about the first one? I think without question, without a doubt, it's obviously Wester. I know they didn't place top 8 last cup, but they're the best team in NA for now right now. I don't think that's like too much of a debate. I
Hot take.
know they lost slammed, but hot take, they're still the best team. Doesn't matter. Um, so yeah, who do you have next up though?
Yeah, I think you'll look at the winners from the last cup, which is the New York Subliners
Yep.
Academy. I mean, we sort of talked about it on the last podcast. They look better with Glow Frosty. Honestly, I think he suits their team, and they're pacing a lot better. They all stepped up. They all individually had their moments. Their S&D looks stronger, and being that they're one of the few teams that they're at their core has stuck together. Um, has I think helped them in terms of chemistry and in terms of consistency. And fun fact, given the fact that Wester actually placed outside the top 8, Smart now takes sole possession as the only player in all of challengers, any challengers that is, to have a placement within the top 6 at every cup.
Wow.
Second, he plays second at the first cup, top 6, top 4, second and first. So he's
Jeez.
that's incredible consistency out of him. But who do you have for third?
So third, I have the. They haven't gone by this name yet, but they are the Toronto Academy team, which is Slammed. So Insight, Onyx, Sesky, and Scrap, and these guys obviously were the ones that beat Wester, so that's obviously impressive in and of itself. And then also the last 3 cups, they've shown consistent form. It's the same story for them as it is every tournament, which is basically their S&D will be nasty, and they will beat you in S&D, but the respawn is lacking a little bit. But what we saw in the last cup, in one of the matches that I watched, Insight had like a disgusting KD in respawn, and he was frying. So if he can get everyone a little bit more up to speed in respawn and they kind of carry the load in that department, they could definitely win some games. Like they're competitive in respawn. Before they were getting smoked out of the water. Like now they're keeping up and Insight's looking fantastic. And I think with that added, slaying power, they can definitely steal more respawns now. And they look like a really solid, consistent team. So I have them third right now.
No, I think that's a great assessment. I mean, you look at the past 3 cups, third, fifth, sixth, fourth. I mean, they're placing within that top 6 as well. I think Insight, even with them, they haven't really lost a step in S&D, as you've said. And if anything, they've gained something in Respawn with his talent. Obviously, that was their first event with Insight, and they were able to beat Wester, which is pretty impressive. I expect their Respawn to improve as they play more with him. So, yeah, I think they're a lock. And I think our fourth team for lock will have to be the guys from BBG. I know they've sort of been up and down, and you could argue maybe they're lower down this list in terms of teams that you'd expect. But they've sort of hit their form as of late. I mean, they placed top 8 at Cup 4, or Cup 5 rather. They were top 4 or top 3 at Cup 4. So they placed within the top 3, top 8. And then before that is a bit of a mess where they didn't even make top 8 for the first 3 cups. But as of late, as you've seen, they sort of found their groove. I think they looked a lot better. Ronan's done a better job of getting them on the same sort of page. Pentagram is starting to look more like he was earlier when he was with Hire, which is a good sign for them. But I do believe that they'll be another one of the teams that we see make this top 8.
Yeah, I agree. And so some people might say like they're a bit high because they didn't place like that well in the last cup, but like the next team I want to say is gonna be Rex's team. But the reason
Mhm.
why I agree with you that is because they're such a newly formed team that you can have like a one-off and have a great event and it not be indicative of how the team's going to play consistently the whole year.
Mhm.
But what I will say is Rex's team looked good in the sense that they had issues still, but they seemed fixable. So like what I mean by that is at an individual level, Phantom and Rex both were phenomenal, and he's the one that was suffering a little bit. But if he's the one that's not pulling his weight yet, it's gonna get there, and he's gonna be fine in S&D. And once he gets his respawn and like the team gets more reps together, they're gonna be a really good team. I tend to favor teams that are really good at S&D and have to work on respawn. I kind of think the respawn will get there, especially when you have guys like Phantoms and Rex who already slay out of their minds usually.
Yep.
So bringing like the other guys up to speed is not going to be too much of an issue, I don't think. Like Jin Choi also, by the way, I've been high on this guy for so long. He's such a good S&D player. I'm glad he's getting on a team like this where it's a good mix, right? You got your Yeez and Jinchoid for S&D, Phantoms and Rex and Respawn, and it feels like a good formula and it feels like a good team to me. And I expect them to get top 8, especially considering how well they played in the last weekend. But who do you have after them?
Yeah, I agree with a lot what you said also about Team Rex, but on the other side of that coin, I think who we're gonna put sixth, and we can go debate back and forth about this one, but I'm gonna have Sib's team,
Ooh,
which
okay.
is Maki. So that'd be Sib, Cells, Hollow, and Jimbo, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, they're also a relatively new team. They ended up placing, I believe, top 6 at the last event. They lost to Slammed, beat Higher, and then lost to Rex, of all people. But
Yep.
I mean, watching some of their matches back, you could see how individually talented all of them are. For Cells and Hollow, um, it was nice for them because they had a lot of horrible placements earlier on during the season. So to see them, get some success this past cup, I think lets me feel confident about their abilities to place top 8. Obviously, I think it'll be a little more difficult for them, given that they don't have as many pro points as the other teams. I think they're seeded 6. Okay, so 6 isn't a bad seed for them going in. Could have been a lot worse, but yeah, I think they're incredibly talented individually. I mean, we saw Cells having some incredible plays from himself. Hollow's making plays. Sib is incredibly talented. It's just a matter if they could get on the same page for longer than a couple of cups, because Sib's teams have had that issue in the past. But I have them 6, just based on talent alone.
Yeah, they're going to be very good, and like you said with Sib, based on talent alone, it should be enough, right? And then you also consider the fact they get more time to play together as a team, and
Mhm.
also the problem we've always had with Sib has been communication and has been centered around that, and it kind of feels like with guys like Hollow, guys like Cells, they're experienced and players, and like Hollow had a taste of of league of pro play last year, and I don't think they're going to really be arguing mid map and having the same kind of communications issues. I expect them to be more professional and kind of fine tune those problems and it not be that as much of an issue as it usually is for Sips teams. I
Yeah.
could be wrong there, but it feels like they'll be a better center team and have less problems in game, which will then make their gameplay stand out more. But that brings us to the next pick, and I have. So this one's tough. Like the teams that we have left here are good,
Yeah.
and they just haven't seen consistent placements. But I'm really leaning towards Triumph for the next spot. They did place in 2 different top 32 seeds, which looks horrible. But their peak is also top 4, and they also placed top 8 in the first 2 cups together. It's just like they shouldn't be placing top 32. I don't think that's indicative of this team at all. I think guys like Standy are extremely talented, and I expect them to still make it to the Elite Series. I mean, it's Royalty, Dab Patty, General, Standy. That team should make it to the Elite Series. That shouldn't be like a question. But lately they haven't been playing as well, so I can see why why some people might think that's a little bit crazy to put them above Higher or Fellows team who has seen arguably more consistency, right?
hmm
Um, but I'm leaning towards Triumph. But do you have a contention there?
Um, I was initially going to look at maybe Higher over them, um,
Hmm.
just based on the fact that they're a new team. They just placed top 8. I think with
They did.
time,
Yeah.
they look better. But I think Triumph, I mean, you can't go wrong with. Um, Again, it's
Higher
really
did
tough
place.
because
Yeah, you're right. Higher did just place top 8, and they haven't placed that badly before.
see, that's the thing. These last
Oh,
2 spots are probably the hardest to pick because there's so many teams. Like even teams that not were not listed
like
here
Stamina's
on,
team.
like Stamina's team that or Aches for all we know, or John, they have a loose seed, could make a surprise run. Um, it's so tough. If I had to
Yeah.
say, um, the one thing that I want to talk about Triumph in regards to their poor placements is I looked back and checked to see the teams that they're losing to in order for them to place top 32. In Cup 3, it was the team called, let me see what the name was, Your Team Name, which was Durpin. And if I'm not mistaken, Durpin was the guy that was accused of cheating,
He might have been. Yeah.
or might have actually been cheating. So that one, I mean, you could argue like isn't really a fair loss. And then you look at their most previous placement, and they lost to Team Degen early on. which
Yeah.
again, Cruz's team would sort of came out of nowhere. So I do think you can make a case that in a double, uh, what do you call it?
Elim.
Bracket Elim. There,
Yeah, got you.
double Elim bracket. They'll have more opportunity. They'll play better. And like you said, their peak. We know what their peak is. They are extremely talented. They just can't close out maps to save their lives.
Yeah.
So I'll agree. I'll agree to put Triumph 7th.
No, actually, I'm backtracking. I like higher 7th actually.
Okay. I was
Yeah,
just
I'm
yeah
backtracking.
higher. I think higher. We put 7th.
Okay.
But then then we go to this discussion. Like, who do we put 8?
So
Team
for
DJ?
8, well, for 8, like DJ had one good tournament. I can't.
Exactly.
I know they placed high, but I can't. I'm just
Then you look
between. I'm between these two. I'm between Triumph and Fellow.
Yeah.
Personally,
Well, let me go back through Fellows placements and see.
they're not bad. They're not bad.
Cause I know, because this team isn't. So it's Fellow, Decimate, Draza, and Nagafen. So you look at that lineup and you think, okay, Draza, Desi, like those guys are extremely talented. Fellow's a sub now. He's a veteran, as is Nagafen. This team should, without a doubt, make top 8. You look at their placements: top 16, 6th at Cup 3, and then top 8 at the first 2 cups, but that was with Triumph. In fact, he's only played 2 events with this roster, and they've both been top 16. So that's a little concerning, the fact that they have yet to make top 8 as a roster. But, who knows? Maybe it's sticking together that will help them, get through this, this Elite Series. I'm trying to look at who they lost to KCP, which was like Anthrax.
Anthrax dropping bombs.
Anthrax dropping bombs. And then looking at 4, they lost to Triumph. That's interesting. So they actually lost to Triumph.
Fell's old team.
Yeah, so Fell's old team. So, yeah, that's the thing. Like, I can't.
It's so tough. Okay, well, who do you think is more raw talented between those two teams? It's not an easy one to pick, but I would argue that Decimate and Jiraza, to me, stand out more than a twosome on the Triumph side of things.
Yeah, that's true. But the thing is
fair to say?
Triumph as a team, I like better.
Yeah, I kind of agree.
Fellows team, I think they work better. Placements wise, their ceiling's better. I think we should pick Triumph because I think.
Damn. All right.
We should look at ceiling. Sensor was more of a joke to put there, honestly. I don't really expect much of them.
No, but
although I like Spoof, but I don't know if that roster is going to be getting it done.
You're right, but at the end of the day, like they could do it. Like there definitely is room for upsets. Like the only I would say, like we said before, outside of the top 4, really, we're not confident. We're not confident that any of these teams will make it outside the top 4. Maybe top 6. We'll get those.
I'd say top 6.
Let's say top 6. Yeah, outside the top 6, so anybody else can make it realistically. And even in those top 6, like we have not seen that consistent placements. So you never really know. But yeah, I agree with your point. I think Triumph, they should be the better team. So I'm gonna lean that way as well.
Yeah, I think we go Triumph. I think we go with how the team. You look at their placements. I think losing the team general was a bit of an unfortunate circumstance. I think it was map 5 as well, if I'm not mistaken, or it could be a mistake. Actually, I don't have the series count, but they lost to them. They don't lose that series to G-Gen. Who knows how far they end up going? So I'll consider one off again, double Elim. So that will make things a lot more different for these teams to see how they bounce back. At least teams that haven't placed within top 8 yet. But again, I think I'm pretty confident in the top 8 we have, at least top 6. I think NA is going to be the one to watch. Who knows what happens there? I'd love to see a Cinderella run from one of these teams to make it in, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, just for all you Spotify listeners, I should just run it through. So we got Wester, then New York Academy, then Slammed or Toronto Academy, then BBG, then Rex's team, and then Sib's team, and then Higher, and then Triumph. That's our top 8. And sitting outside are teams like Gorillas, Stamina's team, Fellows team. There's a lot of good teams, and it's gonna be really exciting. But it's it starts on Saturday, so keep an eye out for that. And get ready to watch some competitive AMC's content. It's gonna be fun.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be intense, heated. The new update seemingly has changed movement a little bit, so who knows how that's gonna affect things. But I'm really excited to see how it all ends up playing. because we finally get to see, the late series come to fruition after hearing about it for all these months.
Yep, that's all for us. So thank you, and see you next time.